Chapter 7 of Among the Pond People. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tech Savvy. Among the Pond People by Clara, Dillingham, PIERSON. Chapter 7. The Runaway Water Spiders. When the little water spiders first opened their eyes, and this was as soon as they were hatched, they found themselves in a cozy home of one room which their mother had built under the water. This room had no window and only one door. There was no floor at all. When Father Stickleback had asked Mrs. Spider why she did not make a floor, she had looked at him in great surprise and said, "Why, if I had built one, I should have no place to go in and out." She really thought him quite stupid not to think of that. It often happens, you know, that really clever people think each other stupid just because they live in different ways. Afterward, Mrs. Water Spider saw Father Stickleback's neck and understood why he asked that question. When her home was done, it was half as large as a big acorn, and a charming place for water spider babies. The side walls and the rounding ceiling were all of the finest spider silk, and the bottom was just one round doorway. The house was built under the water, and fastened down by tiny ropes of spider silk which were tied to the stems of pond plants. Mrs. Water Spider looked at it with a happy smile. "Next I must fill it with air," said she, "and then it will be ready. I am out of breath now." She crept up the stem of the nearest plant and sat in the air for a few minutes, eating her lunch and resting. Next, she walked down the stem until just the end of her body was in the air. She stood so, with her head down, then gave a little jerk and dove to her home. As she jerked, she crossed her hind legs and caught a small bubble of air between them and her body. When she reached her home, she went quickly in the open doorway and let go of her bubble. It did not fall downward to the floor, as bubbles do in most houses, and there were two reasons for this. In the first place, there was no floor. In the second place, air always falls upwards in the water. This fell up until it reached the rounded ceiling and had to stop. Just as it fell, a drop of water went out through the open doorway. The home had been full of water, you know, but now that Mrs. Spider had begun to bring in air, something had to be moved to make a place for it. She brought down 13 more bubbles of air, and then the house was filled with it. On the lower side of the open doorway there was water, and on the upper side was air, and each stayed where it should. When Mrs. Spider came into her house, she always had some air caught in the hairs which covered her body, even when she did not bring a bubble of it in her hind legs. She had to have plenty of it in her home to keep her from drowning, for she could not breathe water like a fish. "Side doors may be all right for sticklebacks," said she, "for they do not need air, but I must have bottom doors, and I will have them too." After she had laid her eggs, she had some days in which to rest and visit the water boatmen who lived near. They were great friends. Belostoma used to ask the water boatmen, who were his cousins, why they were so neighborly with the water spiders. "I don't like to see you so much with 8-legged people," he said. "They are not our kind." Belostoma was very proud of his family. "We know that they have rather too many legs to look well," said Mrs. Water Boatman, "but they are pleasant, and we are interested in the same things. You know we both carry air about with us in the water, and so few of our neighbors seem to care anything for it." She was a sensible little person, and knew the people who were really fond of her friends, who do not care how many legs they have. She carried her air under her wings, but there were other boatmen, near relatives, who spread theirs over their whole bodies and looked very silvery and beautiful when they were under water. One day when Mrs. Water Spider was sitting on a lily pad and talking with her friends, a water boatman rose quickly from the bottom of the pond. As soon as he got right side up, and that means as soon as he got to floating on his back, he said to her, "I hear queer sounds in your house. I was feeding near there, and the noise startled me, so that I let go of the stone I was holding to, and came up. I think your eggs must be hatching." "Really?" exclaimed Mrs. Water Spider. "I shall be so glad. A house always seems lonely to me without children." She dove to her house and found some very fine Water Spider babies there. You may be sure she did not have much time for visiting after that. She had to hunt food and carry it down to her children, and when they were restless and impatient she stayed with them and told them stories of the great world. Sometimes they teased to go out with her, but this was she never allowed. "Wait until you are older," she would say. "It will not be so very long before you can go safely." The children thought it had been a long, long time already, and one of them made a face when his mother said this. She did not see him, and it was well for him that she did not. He should have been very much ashamed of himself for doing it. The next time Mrs. Water Spider went for food, one of the children said, "I tell you what let's do. Let's all go down to the doorway and peek out." They looked at each other and wondered if they did. That was something their mothers had forbidden them to do. There was no window to look through, and they wanted very much to see the world. At last the little fellow who had made a face said, "I'm going to anyway." After that his brothers and sisters went too. And this shows how, if good little spiders listen to naughty little spiders, they become naughty little spiders themselves. All the children ran down and peeked around the edge of the door, but they couldn't see much besides water, and they had seen that before. They were sadly disappointed. Somebody said, "I'm going to put 2 of my legs out." Somebody else said, "I'll put 4 out." A big brother said, "I'm going to put 6 out." And another brother said, "I'll put 8 out. Dare you to." You know what naughty little spiders would be likely to do then? Well, they did it. And as it happened, they had just pulled their last legs through the open window when a stickleback father came along. "Aren't you rather young to be out of the nest?" said he in his most pleasant voice. Poor little water spiders! They didn't know he was one of the mother's friends, and he seemed so big to them, and the bones on his cheeks made him look so queer, and the stickles on his back were so sharp, that every one of them was afraid and let go of the wall of the house. And then every one of them rose quickly to the top, into the light and open air. They crawled upon a lily pad and clung there, frightened, and feeling weak in all their knees. The dragonflies flew over them, the wild ducks swam past them, and on a log not far away they saw a long row of mud turtles sunning themselves. Why nothing dreadful happened, one cannot tell. Perhaps it was bad enough as it was, for they were so scared that they could only huddle close together and cry, "We want our mother." Here Mrs. Water Spider found them. She came home with something for dinner and saw her house empty. Of course she knew where to look, for, as she said, if they stepped outside the door, they would be quite sure to tumble up into the air. She took them home, one at a time, and how she ever did it nobody knows. When they were all safely there and had eaten the food that was waiting for them, Mrs. Spider, who had not scolded them at all, said, "Look at me straight in the eye, every one of you. Will you promise never to run away again?" Instead of saying at once, "Yes, Mother," as they should have done, one of them answered, "Why, we didn't run away. We were just peeking around the edge of the doorway, and we got too far out, and somebody came along and scared us so that we let go, and that we wouldn't help falling up into the air." "Oh, no," said their mother, "you couldn't help it then, of course. But who told you that you might peep out of the door?" The little water spiders hung their heads and looked very much ashamed. Their mother went on, "You needn't say that you were not to blame. You were to blame, and you began to run away as soon as you took the first step toward the door. Only you didn't know that you were going so far. Tell me," she said, "whether you would ever have gone to the top of the water if you had not taken that first step." The little water spiders were more ashamed than ever, and then they had to look her in the eye and promise to be good. It is very certain that one of those children even peeped around the edge of the doorway from that day until their mother told them that they might go into the world and build houses for themselves. "Remember just one thing," she said, as they started away. "Always take your food home to eat." And they always did, for no water spider who has been well brought up will ever eat away from his own home. End of chapter 7. Recording by TechSavvy. www.techsavvy.wordpress.com